Hey guys, tonight we slip into a world without radiators, fleece blankets, or double-glazed windows. You're standing outside a thatch-roofed cottage on the edge of a frozen field. The sun's already vanished, and the wind? It doesn't knock, it claws. Your breath fogs the air in little ghost puffs, and your fingers feel stiff, even under layers that smell like smoke and sheep. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks once, then stops. You're about to step into a medieval peasant's winter night, cold enough to turn your spit to ice midair. And fair warning, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where, and when, you're watching from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You push open the door with your shoulder. The hinges groan like an old man getting out of bed. It's a single-room house, drafty and dim, and the ceiling so low you could high-five it. The smell hits first, damp wool, ash, something sour like spoiled milk. But inside, at least, it's not quite freezing. You shut the door quickly. Every second it stays open is another icy hand gripping your neck. It's early winter, and tonight's low will dip below freezing, maybe worse. This isn't decorative snow outside. This is the kind that kills your chickens, cracks your bucket, and makes your own breath a weapon against you. But you've made it inside. That's something. You stamp the slush from your shoes, if you're lucky enough to have them, and glance around. A small hearth flickers in the corner. It's not roaring. It's not even cracking. It's just alive, barely. A little orange glow curling up like it's too tired to bother. And that's the thing, firewood is precious. You can't just go out and chop down a tree. Not unless you own the land, which, spoiler alert, you don't. Most peasants rely on what's called gleaning, gathering fallen branches or dried dung patties. If a lord catches you felling his trees, that could mean a fine. Or worse. So the fire is weak by design. It's just strong enough to keep your water from freezing in the pot and your fingers from going brittle. Well, most of your fingers. You inch closer, holding out your hands, careful not to block the heat from anyone else in the room. Yes, you're not alone. This one-room cottage is home to your entire family, 3 generations, plus maybe a lodger. And don't forget the chickens that sometimes roost in the rafters. Personal space? That's a myth. You breathe the same air, share the same blanket, and probably dream each other's dreams out of sheer proximity. Now, historians still argue whether peasant homes had internal insulation. Some claim straw was stuffed between walls or beneath thatch. Others insist most cottages were little more than windbreaks. What we know is that even well-constructed peasant homes leaked heat like a sieve. The gaps between wooden slats? Perfect for winter wind to whistle through like a nosy ghost. So people got creative. They hung tapestries, or rough wool cloth, on walls to slow the draft. Some stuffed rags or moss into holes. But most of all, they relied on one thing, body heat. You'll notice there's a reason no one's standing far from anyone else. Another oddity? The floor. You might expect wood. Nope. It's packed dirt, and in winter it's as cold as the grave. That's why rushes, dried plants like straw, get scattered to insulate the ground and soak up moisture. Of course, these rushes also get mixed with, well, everything. Bits of food, rat droppings, and whatever came in on your boots. Fun fact, some wealthier folks perfumed their floor rushes with lavender or rosemary. You get plain straw and a prayer it's dry. The cold creeps in regardless. It finds your neck, your ankles, that one spot between layers. There's a joke, told mostly by people with stone walls and fireplaces upstairs, that a peasant never stays warm. You just chase heat in circles. Still, as bleak as this all sounds, there's resilience in the room. You're not helpless. People knew how to survive cold nights, not thrive, not enjoy, but survive. You heat stones in the fire and tuck them in your bedding. You pile your clothes by the hearth so you're not dressing into ice come morning. And yes, you learn the art of the huddle, sleeping like a pile of kittens, overlapping limbs, breath warming your neck, elbows in someone's ribs. Here's a quirky bit. Some peasants supposedly smeared animal fat on their skin as insulation. Not because they loved the aroma of raw bacon, but because any barrier was better than nothing. Whether that actually worked or was more superstition than science, historians still debate it. But in a world without synthetic fabrics or Gore-Tex, you'd try anything. The psychological toll of the cold was real, too. Night brought more than just temperature drops, it brought fear. With no clocks, time dissolved. You measured hours by the dying of the fire or the turning of the stars, if you could see them. Nights could last forever in winter, and when it's cold, dark, and quiet, your mind doesn't always play nice. So you count your blessings. You have shelter, such as it is. You have a fire, even a weak one. You have others breathing beside you. And even if that breath smells like onions and old cheese, it means life. Tomorrow, you'll scrounge for kindling. You'll trade a carrot for a wool patch. You'll rub your hands and mutter about the wind. But for now, you just sit, letting the smoke sting your eyes and the flicker of fire tell your body it's not time to die. That, more than anything, is the secret to surviving the coldest medieval nights. You endure. Your breath still ghosts out in pale clouds as you fumble for another layer. The fire's gone from flicker to ember, and everyone in the cottage is tugging closer into themselves, wrapping cloth tighter, curling feet beneath thighs. It's officially freezing, and now comes the delicate dance of staying warm without freezing to death, or boiling under 10 pounds of itchy wool. Tonight, you wear everything you own. And probably some things you don't. Let's start with the underlayer, your trusty linen shirt. It's coarse, slightly stiff, and maybe hasn't seen a proper washing since late summer, but it does the job. Linen breathes, keeps you cool when it's hot, holds in some heat when it's cold. It's the peasant's default second skin, often passed down, patched at the elbows, and as familiar as your own shadow. Over that comes the wool. Ah yes, wool, the scratchy, miracle fabric of medieval survival. You pull on a tunic or a kirtle, depending on who you are and what village slang dictates. It's thick, woven tight, and dyed a color that can best be described as mud-adjacent. Unless you were lucky enough to score some woad-dyed blue, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. Then, there's the overcoat, or what passes for one. A heavy cloak, maybe made of more wool, maybe lined with rabbit fur if you inherited something special. The luckiest might have access to a sheepskin pelisse, still faintly redolent of its original owner. The less lucky make do with patched-together scraps, sewn roughly with whatever thread and hope they've got. Even with all this, the cold sneaks in. Wool doesn't cover everything, after all. The gaps between sleeve and glove, or lack thereof, are little highways for icy air. So you wrap rags around your wrists. You shove straw into your boots, assuming you own any, and maybe even your shirt if you're desperate. One fringe record mentions people stuffing wool with dry moss for insulation. Moss. Not your usual fashion fabric. And yes, you may be wearing someone else's clothes. In the dead of winter, nobody's picky. You swap cloaks, share layers, repurpose tablecloths into shawls. Clothing is too expensive to belong entirely to one person. That tunic you're sweating in right now? Last week, your cousin wore it to gather turnips. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants truly owned more than one full set of clothing. The debate hinges on regional wealth, textile access, and inheritance customs. But most agree, you wore what you had until it disintegrated. Then, you stitched it back together and wore it again. Shoes. Let's talk about those little foot-shaped jokes. If you're lucky, you've got leather-turned shoes, tied with simple strings, thin enough to feel every rock beneath your sole. If not, you're wrapping your feet in cloth, binding it with string, and hoping it holds. Socks exist, sure, but they're rare treasures. Some knit from coarse wool, others more like bag shoes than actual hosiery. Either way, don't expect toasty toes. Now here's a fun tidbit. Some villagers would line their boots with rabbit fur, fur side in, to retain heat. Not many rabbits survived this particular fashion trend, but hey, better a barefoot bunny than a frostbitten peasant. You glance around the room and realize that layering isn't just about clothes. It's mental armor. Each piece you pull on is a talisman against the elements. The hood drawn over your head isn't just warm, it's a barrier between you and the cruel, uncaring night. But it's also a shared burden. Look to your left. Your little brother's wearing a cloak that once belonged to your grandfather, so old the seams are mostly memory. To your right, your mother adjusts the wool wrap around her shoulders, pinning it with a bone brooch carved with a lopsided flower. Not for decoration. For utility. The pin keeps it from falling off when she stirs porridge tomorrow morning. And here's the kicker. Warmth is a social currency. You lend your cloak to someone who's colder, knowing it'll come back to you when you're shivering. You share a fire seat, even when you're bone-tired of people pressing in. Because surviving winter isn't just about you. It's about everyone pulling each other through. Of course, vanity doesn't vanish entirely. Even if fashion is more function than flair, there's pride in a well-mended sleeve or an unusually dyed hem. Dark green, for instance, meant you had access to ferns or nettles. Blue from woad? That was trickier, smelled like rotting cabbages when processed but marked you as someone with connections, or maybe just someone willing to stink for style. Weirdly enough, medieval people believed certain colors helped preserve heat. Red, in particular, was seen as warm, and some cloaks were dyed with madder root just for that extra psychological edge. Whether it actually worked or not. Again, historians go back and forth. But the color alone might have made you feel warmer, which in a freezing cottage, counts for something. Now imagine layering all this before dawn. No central heating. Just your breath, your sleeves, and your willpower. You don't take layers off until the frost lifts, maybe not even then. Sleeping in your cloak? Normal. Keeping your hood on indoors? Necessary. Removing your shoes at night? Risky. There's no changing into pajamas. Your bedclothes are your day clothes, just slightly rearranged. You might loosen your belt. Maybe swap outerwear for an extra wool blanket. But the layers stay. And let's not forget the sounds of winter layering, the rustle of coarse linen, the scratch of wool against wool, the sharp inhale as cold air hits exposed skin during a quick wardrobe shuffle. Every motion is deliberate. Every gap closed is a victory. Eventually, your muscles remember how to settle under the weight. The layers press into your shoulders, but also shield your ribs. It's like being tucked into a burrito made of scratchy yarn and survival instinct. And just as you're finally warming up, someone opens the door. The door creaks open, and the world outside comes crashing in, one icy gust at a time. Cold air slices through the cottage like a jealous ghost, curling around ankles, crawling up sleeves. You hiss through your teeth as your body contracts, every warm muscle now retreating like a snail under threat. Shut it, someone whispers, not yells, whispers, because shouting wastes breath and heat. The door thunks shut behind your cousin, his arms wrapped around a bundle of kindling like it's gold. It might as well be. You all settle again, huddling closer than before. But now it's time to deal with the second line of defense, bed sharing. Or, more accurately, body sharing. Here's the thing. A medieval peasant's bed wasn't just a place to sleep, it was a communal heat pod. You don't have a private room. You don't even have a private corner. What you have is a mattress made of straw, or maybe sacks filled with old wool, laid out on a raised wooden frame, if you're lucky, or straight on the floor, if you're not. Tonight, you're pressed into one of these family beds, shoulder to shoulder with 3, maybe 4 others, siblings, parents, possibly even livestock if the cold gets serious. The smell is human and earthy, the kind of scent that hits you like a hug and a dare. A blend of sweat, feet, and smoke-tinged breath. And yes, fleas. Don't forget those. They love warmth almost as much as you do. You shift beneath a single blanket. Or more likely, a few layers of rough-spun wool and patchwork fur cloaks. The weight of it feels like it could pin you to the earth, which is good, because you want as little heat escaping as possible. The trick is to turn slowly. No sudden flaps or folds. Any opening invites cold air, and no one wants to be the person who lets the frost in. One elbow jabs your ribs. Another set of toes, icy, always icy, tucks under your knee. You grunt, but you don't move. This is the unspoken code of shared beds, minimal wiggle room, maximum forgiveness. You share body heat, and if that means someone's arm goes numb under someone else's head, so be it. There's a reason this was called a warming practice. The medieval bed wasn't about comfort, it was about conservation. Your body is a coal. Everyone else? Coals too. Together, you make a small fire that might, just might, last till morning. Now, some households got creative. One fringe record from 13th century France describes putting a clay pot of hot coals, a bed warmer, beneath the straw. Sounds smart, right? Until someone kicks it over. Then it's less of a cozy moment and more of a cottage fire drill. So, most people stick to safer methods. Like goats. Yes, goats. In winter, smaller animals were often allowed inside the living space, not just into the house, but onto the actual sleeping area. A warm goat at your feet? That's not a nuisance. That's a lifesaver. Chickens under the bed frame? Built-in foot warmers with feathers. Historians still debate whether pigs were commonly invited into peasant beds. Some sources suggest yes, at least in extreme cold. Others argue pigs were too valuable and too, well, piggy. But dogs? Definitely. The medieval mutt wasn't just a guard animal. It was your foot furnace. And then there's sleep itself. Or rather, the way people experienced it. See, it wasn't one long block like we expect today. Instead, medieval peasants likely slept in two shifts, first sleep and second sleep, separated by a period of quiet wakefulness sometime around midnight. What did you do during that break? Depends. Pray, stoke the fire, rearrange the bed pile, or quietly curse whoever keeps hogging the covers. It sounds odd until you experience it. You wake up in the dark, blink at the rafters, feel the body heat pressing in around you like loaves in a baker's basket, and just exist. For a while. Not asleep, not fully awake. It's liminal, cozy in its own quiet way. Then the second sleep creeps in like a warm tide. Quirky fact, some rural folk believe dreams during second sleep were messages from the spirit world. That odd dream about a cow juggling onions? Might be divine insight. Or last night's cabbage stew messing with your brain. Either way, no one dismisses it out of hand. You shift again, carefully. The straw creaks beneath you. Someone mumbles in their sleep, and someone else lets out a snore so deep it sounds like it came from the floorboards. The fire has faded to a faint orange blush, like a shy moon. Someone will have to get up and tend it soon, but not yet. Not while it's still giving enough heat to fog the air with breath. The weight of sleep presses down again. You sink into it, not because it's soft, but because your body is tired of resisting the cold. It surrenders. Your eyelids drift. Your limbs anchor themselves to the floor, or the bed, or whoever's beside you. It doesn't matter. You think briefly about what waits in the morning: frozen buckets, aching joints, chores before sunrise. But for now, you're inside. You're warm, in the peasant sense. You're with others. That's the closest thing to safety winter allows. And then, somewhere between the tickle of straw at your neck and the slow inhale of the person beside you, you fall asleep. You wake up before the rooster. Not because you want to, because something cold and wet just dripped on your forehead. You blink into darkness, groggy, and instinctively reach up. Your fingers touch icy dampness. You look up. Ah, yes. The thatch is leaking again. It's not even raining outside. It's just the frost, melted by your body heat rising in the night and now dripping back down as dew. That's the problem with living under a straw roof. Your warmth is always escaping upward, and sometimes, it comes right back down to say hello. Not exactly the welcome committee you were hoping for before dawn. You shuffle out of the bedding nest, careful not to disturb the fragile warmth cocoon. Every footstep on the wooden floor feels like stepping on a cold grave. Your breath appears in white puffs as you crouch beside the hearth, nudging at what's left of the fire. It's down to a few slumbering embers, sulking beneath a blanket of ash. You reach for a piece of dry kindling, dry being a generous word, and gently, desperately, start coaxing the fire back to life. Blow. Add a bit of straw. Blow again. Whisper to it like a secret. Maybe even curse at it under your breath. Eventually, a flame flickers up like it's reconsidering retirement. That little flame becomes your savior, and suddenly, the room feels one notch less deadly. You feed it carefully, and it rewards you with warmth just shy of meaningful. But hey, it's something. This morning's cold isn't just biting, it's aggressive. It goes for your fingertips, your knees, the back of your neck. You wrap your cloak tighter and move on to the next order of business, the morning routine. You think shower? Toothpaste? Let's reset expectations. First stop, the chamber pot, if your family has one. Otherwise, it's a short, excruciating walk to the outer edge of the cottage where the waste pit is dug, usually shared among several households. You brace yourself for the outdoor blast. Open the door. And there it is. The winter air hits like a slap made of ice and bad intentions. You flinch, tears springing to your eyes, nose instantly running. Your boots crunch through frost, breath huffing out in tiny, rhythmic clouds. The sky is still dark, stars peeking out behind a curtain of pale silver, like they're watching just to see if you make it. Even your shadow shivers. You do what you came to do and hurry back in. The few seconds outside leave your fingers numb and your cheeks stinging. And that's the tame version. Imagine needing to do real work outside in this. Well, you will, in about an hour. But first, food. Sort of. Breakfast isn't pancakes and bacon. It's more of a let's see what hasn't frozen solid situation. Porridge, if you're lucky, a sad-looking gruel made from barley or oats, boiled till it resembles edible paste. Someone stirs it over the small fire while others rise reluctantly, stomping their feet into life. No sugar. No spice. just hot mush. But when the outside world wants to turn your lungs into icicles, even bland mush tastes like mercy. Here's the quirky bit. Some families used to wrap leftover porridge in cloth overnight and hang it to solidify. In the morning, you'd slice off pieces like oatmeal cake. Sound appetizing? Maybe not, but it's portable and doesn't require plates. Also, historians still argue whether such preserved porridge was eaten cold or reheated. Some say cold porridge slices were common, others insist reheating was essential. Either way, you chew slowly, letting the warmth soak into your bones. The hearth becomes the center of morning activity. The fire, now alive and crackling, serves not just for cooking but for everything: light, warmth, morale. You rotate around it like a sunflower follows the sun. People hold their hands close, then flip them like toast. Someone lifts skirts to warm their legs. Someone else stretches boots toward the flames, steam rising from last night's dampness. You also take this moment to dry your one pair of socks. Carefully. Too close to the fire and they'll scorch, too far, and they'll still be wet when it's time to put them back on. Welcome to peasant laundry logistics. Now comes the water fetching. Unless you live right next to a well, which you probably don't, this job means hauling buckets from a nearby stream or communal source. Water freezes overnight, so you bring a stick to break the crust of ice. You also bring a friend, because slipping on a frosty trail with a full bucket is the medieval equivalent of rage-quitting life. Also, you don't waste that water. Ever. That bucket might handle dishwashing, face rinsing, cooking, and even the occasional wound cleansing, all before you consider dumping it. Gray water gets repurposed constantly, which is why hygiene isn't exactly pristine, but survival takes priority over sparkle. Fun historical fact: in especially bitter winters, villagers sometimes shared water trips, combining households to conserve strength. If it's too cold to survive alone, you make errands communal. It's cold socialism, but it works. The frost creeps into everything: the butter, the bed sheets, your bones. You remember hearing your uncle once say, "Cold this sharp will shave your beard off for you." He wasn't joking. You pull your hood low and mentally brace yourself for a long day. Your chores are waiting: animals to feed, wood to chop, fences to repair. But these early hours, this morning gauntlet of freezing fingers and smoky porridge, are about reclaiming your body from the night. You've survived another medieval morning. The sun hasn't risen yet, but your breath has warmed the air around you. You've sipped fire-warmed water, chewed oat glue, and dodged death by drip. In this world, that's already a win. The sky outside begins to blush. A faint pink cracks open behind the branches. A rooster crows, late, honestly, and a dog stretches by the hearth. One of the children farts in their sleep and nobody blames them. It's warm, and the cottage is coming alive. Time to go split some logs. You step outside and instantly regret every decision that led you here. The cold isn't just a temperature, it's a living thing. It slinks under your tunic, snakes down your sleeves, and sinks its teeth into your neck like it's owed a favor. Your breath turns thick and ghostly, curling around your face as you hoist the hatchet over your shoulder. The woodpile awaits. or what's left of it. During the winter months, firewood is life. Not just comfort, actual, capital S survival. And chopping it is your gym membership, your job, your therapy, and your nemesis all rolled into one. You grab a frosted log, position it on the chopping block, and swing. Crack. The sound echoes in the cold air like a shot. Splinters fly, your hands sting, and your breath keeps time. Chop. Exhale. Chop. Exhale. The rhythm becomes a little dance with the devil, your muscles burning just enough to thaw the edge off the chill. Now, here's something you've learned the hard way: not all wood is equal. Oak burns slow and hot, but it's a beast to split. Birch ignites fast but vanishes in a flash. Green wood? Might as well throw a wet rag into the hearth. You want dry, seasoned wood, ideally stacked and cured months ago. Which is hilarious, because your family barely survived last year's winter. Forget long-term firewood strategy. A curious historical tidbit? In some regions, peasants used peat instead of wood. That's right, old, compacted plant matter cut from bogs, dried, and burned. It smells like wet socks dipped in ash, but it burns. In marshy areas of Ireland or Scotland, peat was everything. Not just fuel, but also insulation when used to seal drafty walls. Historians still argue whether peat fires caused more respiratory issues than wood-burning ones. Some believe the smoke was denser and more damaging, others suggest poorer ventilation, not fuel type, was the bigger problem. Either way, you cough a lot, and that's just part of the package. Once you've split enough logs to feed the hearth through the afternoon, you haul the bundle back toward the cottage. Your arms are shaking, your back aches, but you've earned a few precious hours of warmth. You drop the wood near the door and stamp your feet to life again. Inside, the air is only marginally warmer, but the fire is brighter now, a cheerful little blaze flickering up from the kindling you started earlier. You feel proud. That heat? That's your work. Now, for insulation, the forgotten hero of medieval winter. See, medieval homes weren't exactly marvels of architecture. Stone walls sucked heat out like sponges. Wooden frames warped in the cold. Thatched roofs leaked and sagged under snow. So people got inventive. Every crack and crevice is plugged with whatever's handy: old cloth, moss, straw, even clay mixed with dung. It's called daub, and it's surprisingly effective. You take a moment to patch a gap in the wall near the hearth. A tuft of sheep's wool and a smear of mud later, the breeze is slightly less offensive. The door? Heavy wood, warped from moisture, but reinforced with a thick curtain made of rough linen. The curtain's called a portière, and it hangs inside the doorframe to slow the cold's entry. It doesn't stop the cold, it just delays it. Like a bouncer who says, "You can come in, but not all at once." Some wealthier peasants even line their walls with old tapestries or stitched sacks to hold the warmth in. Your family has a single one, woven with a crude but charming image of a sheep that may or may not have two heads. You drape it near the sleeping corner, a psychological victory more than anything. Quirky fact: in certain alpine regions, families would spread animal dung across the outer walls, let it harden, and use it as winter insulation. It dried into a sort of primitive cement. Sounds gross? Maybe. But when it's you versus the elements, you don't turn your nose up at poop plaster. That's insulation with attitude. You catch your breath, hands on knees. The fire crackles behind you, and for just a second, you feel content. You've earned your heat today. That's a strange but satisfying truth about peasant life. Every scrap of warmth is the result of labor. Nothing passive. Nothing easy. Just grind and reward. Someone hands you a cup of thin ale, barely stronger than soup, but safer than water in these conditions. Fermentation kills bacteria, after all. You sip it, watching the firelight dance across the stone wall. And as you drink, you spot a familiar enemy creeping in: frost. Not outside, inside. On the inner side of the tiny, greasy window, frost forms delicate white lines like silver spiderwebs. It's so cold, your breath condenses and freezes right there, leaving little ghostly etchings of your life on the glass. That's the kind of detail modern folks forget. When your insides start mimicking the outside, you know winter's not just visiting. It's moved in. And then there's the ultimate chill test, the iron test. You take a nail or knife and tap the wall. If the metal sticks, even for a second, it means the inside temperature is approaching deadly levels. Tonight might be one of those nights. Time to triple-check everything: coals buried deep, blankets layered just right, animals close enough to matter. You glance at the firewood stack. Still decent. Your hands are raw, your clothes smoky, but the hearth burns steady. That's all you need. You sit for a moment, boots steaming near the flames. It's the closest thing to luxury you'll get this month. And you take it. Because the frost is outside, but for now, so are your fears. It's not long before you hear it: hooves, the scrape of cartwheels over frozen earth, and the low bleat of something distinctly annoyed to be awake. You pull your cloak tight and head back out into the gray morning. Time to check on the animals. You round the side of the cottage, frost crunching beneath your feet like brittle paper. There's the animal shelter, byre, if you're feeling fancy. A squat, thatched structure that leans like it's had too much cider. Its walls are wattle and daub, the roof sagging slightly under last week's snow. Inside, the air is warmer, humid with breath and hay and animal funk. The cow looks up at you with the expression of a creature deeply unimpressed by existence. She's steaming gently, the air around her visibly swirling with heat. You pat her flank. Warm. She's your biggest radiator. No joke, some peasant families used to sleep in the byre with their livestock for warmth. Not beside them. With them. Cow cuddles as central heating. Historians still argue whether this practice was common in all regions or mostly confined to the colder parts of Europe. Some records suggest interspecies bunking was widespread among poorer households, while others argue it was frowned upon by the church or considered a sign of deep poverty. Either way, cuddling a pig at night isn't exactly how most people envision romance, but hey, survival changes your standards. You check the trough. Frozen. You break the ice with a stick and ladle in some water from the bucket you dragged earlier. The animals drink greedily, snuffling and snorting. They're your winter partners, your four-legged thermostats. In return for hay, scraps, and occasional hair pulling, they give you milk, eggs, and body heat. It's not all mooing and merriment, though. You still have to muck the byre. There's a particular kind of medieval joy that comes from shoveling manure in sub-zero temperatures. Your hands go numb gripping the wooden shovel, your boots slip in slop half-frozen like gritty pudding, and you can smell things you'd rather forget. But it needs doing, and there's no one else to do it. Plus, fresh manure has a secret use: it gives off warmth. Pile it right, and it becomes your own little heat engine. Some households even used compost heaps beside walls to create warmth on one side of their home. Gross? Yes. Smart? Also yes. You finish the mucking and toss a fresh layer of straw in the stalls. The animals grunt approvingly. The chickens ruffle their feathers and stare at you like you owe them something. Probably a warm worm. Sorry, girls, not today. You gather eggs, each one a surprise miracle. In cold months, hens lay less, sometimes not at all. But today, the gods have smiled, and you collect 3. Carefully, you cradle them in your hands, still warm from the hen. You don't want to drop them. Not because of the mess, but because they represent protein, calories, and hope. As you return to the house, you glance around at the other cottages nearby. Smoke rises from chimneys, some thick and black, others faint and uncertain. You know what that means. Some fires are strong. Others are dying. You make a mental note of who might need help later. Back inside, the warmth hits your cheeks like a soft slap. The hearth is glowing, and the others have started preparing the noon meal. Someone's making pottage, again. Think medieval stew, but stretchier. It's yesterday's vegetables, maybe some beans, and if you're lucky, a scrap of salted meat. The pot hangs over the fire, and it smells edible. Which is high praise. You add the eggs to the mix, and someone raises an eyebrow. All of them, they ask. You nod. You're feeling generous. Or maybe you just want an excuse to taste something that wasn't scraped from the bottom of a cauldron. A fun little aside, in some regions, people tossed heated stones into pots to speed up boiling, especially when firewood was scarce. The stones retained heat and helped conserve fuel. You watched the pot bubble, glad that today, you didn't have to chuck rocks at your food. You sit down near the fire to warm your hands. One of the children sneezes and wipes their nose on their sleeve. Another coughs, a deep, chesty bark. You frown. Illness in winter isn't a surprise. It's an expectation. Respiratory infections run rampant, thanks to damp walls, smoky air, and close quarters. You've already lost a cousin to lung fever. You don't want to lose anyone else. And then comes the truly medieval part of your day, huddling. Not an activity. A necessity. You and your family gather close, around the fire, under blankets, around the table. You huddle for warmth, for comfort, for survival. There's no such thing as personal space in winter. Arms overlap. Heads lean on shoulders. Dogs climb into laps. You might be sitting on someone's foot and not even know it. Or care. You've heard stories of entire households sleeping in shifts just to share the best spots near the hearth. First shift gets the coals. Second shift inherits the warmth. Third shift gets bitter ashes and a grumble. It's a rotation of warmth, a choreographed survival ballet. You spend a moment watching the fire. The flames dance, licking up bits of ash and whispering ancient lullabies in crackles. This fire isn't just heat. It's companionship. It's safety. It's the center of your winter world. The wind howls outside, but the animals are fed, the walls are patched, and the pot simmers steadily. You haven't conquered the cold, but you've held your ground. Today, that's victory enough. You stretch your toes near the hearth, sigh, and lean back. Time to rest. At least until something breaks. The wind doesn't knock politely. It barges in with a groan, nudging shutters, loosening thatch, and dragging icy fingers across your spine, even though you're indoors. You tug your woolen cloak tighter, grateful for every patched seam. It's the middle of the night, and you've just been shaken awake, not by noise, but by silence. The fire. It's dying. Your eyes snap open to a hearth that's gone dim, a red blush of coals barely holding the line against the night. You scramble, quietly, trying not to wake the others. Everyone's packed in like salted fish, arms tangled, breath shallow, the kind of sleep born from exhaustion, not peace. The hearth. That's your first and only priority. You crouch near it, the stone floor freezing through your knees. Your fingers scrabble through the ash, searching for warmth, for a core ember, anything still pulsing. You find one. Just one. Like the last heartbeat of a dying god. You whisper thanks. You grab some dry straw from the bundle near the wall, thankfully, not too damp, and gently, very gently, feed it into the hearth. Your breath becomes bellows. Inhale, exhale, coax. Don't blow too hard, you'll smother it. Don't be too soft, it'll die. The ember flares. Straw catches. The flame stutters, then finds courage. You layer on the kindling, the way your father taught you. Small to large. Soft to stubborn. Before long, the room is flickering again, shadows dancing up the low ceiling beams like medieval ghosts doing morning yoga. You sit back, heart pounding. Not bad for someone half asleep and fully frozen. The fire's alive. So, you probably will be, too. This is what you've come to understand: survival depends on vigilance. One mistake, one missed ember, one crack in the wall, one night where you trusted the fire to just keep going, and that could be it. You live at the mercy of small things. Historians still argue whether fires were ever deliberately left to die out in the dead of winter. Some records say yes, to conserve fuel or teach children responsibility. Others say no one in their right mind would risk it. Either way, you won't be testing theories tonight. Now that you're up, you check the others. Someone's foot is poking out from the blanket stack, pale toes already kissed by frost. You gently tuck the fabric back over them, muttering a sleepy curse at the cold. You yourself are layered like a well-packed sandwich: linen shirt, wool tunic, patched overcoat, and that blessed sheepskin cloak that smells like everything you've done in it, including, unfortunately, some outhouse-related misadventures. Still, it's warm. Not everyone is so lucky. You think of your neighbor, Old Grell, whose only blanket is a tattered piece of sacking. Last week, he tried to trade 3 eggs for a strip of fur. No takers. You make a note to check in on him tomorrow. Clothing is your second fire, and you treat it that way. Wool is the real MVP here. It's scratchy, yes, but it breathes, it insulates, and if it gets wet, it doesn't betray you completely. Linen is lighter and softer but freezes faster. You layer strategically, close to the skin, lighter fabrics, outer shell, as thick as you can beg, borrow, or stitch. Fringe fact: some poorer families stuff their clothing with dry grass for extra insulation. You tried it once. It worked, until it didn't. One spark from the hearth and suddenly your pants became a cautionary tale. You stoke the fire again. It's growing stronger now, crackling confidently. The flames are high enough to dry your socks, hung precariously on a forked stick nearby, and for the first time tonight, the room doesn't feel like a tomb. Someone beside you stirs and groans. A child. Probably dreaming of summer. Or bread. Or both. You glance toward the ceiling. Above you, in the attic space, if your home has one, stores of grain and herbs wait out the winter. The weight of survival literally hangs overhead. In lean years, there's not much up there except disappointment and maybe a few rats pretending they pay rent. You shift your weight. Your stomach growls. You consider nibbling on one of the old turnips from the basket near the door, but decide against it. Night snacks are rationed like gold coins, and besides, you'd have to dip them in salt to make them palatable. You're not that desperate. Yet. Instead, you wrap your cloak tighter and curl back into your sleeping corner. It's barely warm, but the fire's returned, and that means you might drift off again without turning into an icicle. The air smells like ash and wool and wood smoke, your winter perfume. You find your spot between 2 cousins, one of whom snores like a goat being tickled, and you settle back into the nest. You think of summer sometimes. How you cursed the heat, the flies, the endless harvest work. Now you'd sell your last pair of socks for a day in that sun. A historical side note for your midnight misery: in some alpine villages, people literally built houses over animal shelters. The animals lived downstairs, the people above. It wasn't a hygiene flex, but a warmth hack. The heat from below would rise, warming the upper floor. It worked, sort of. Until the smells crept up, too. But again, survival. Not luxury. You blink slowly, eyes half-lidded now. The fire hisses, whispering lullabies. You count the good things, your fingers are still attached. No one's coughing blood. The roof hasn't caved in. There's enough firewood for one more night. That'll do. Outside, snow begins to fall, soft, almost delicate. The wind calms. For now, the cold's given you a break. Don't get used to it. You drift off again, pulled into that strange, fragile sleep of winter peasants, the kind where you're never quite warm, never truly comfortable, but always dreaming. Always surviving. You wake to a sound no one wants to hear in the dead of winter, a slow, steady drip. One drop, then another, falling from above. Not snow melt. That's a luxury problem. This is worse. You crack one eye open and glance upward, past the smoke-stained beams and the hanging bundle of dried onions. There it is. A dark spot on the thatched ceiling, slowly weeping moisture. You groan softly. The thatch is leaking again. Now, thatch isn't just any roof, it's a living patchwork of tightly packed straw, often barley or wheat stems, laid over wooden supports. Done well, it keeps out rain and snow, and insulates like a champ. Done poorly, or, say, maintained by a sleep-deprived peasant with a bad ladder, it can become your own personal showerhead. In January, you rise, gently nudging your sleeping neighbors. No sense soaking them too. You grab a clay bowl and place it under the leak, listening to each drop land with surgical precision. Another rhythm of medieval life. Another chore on your endless, freezing list. Historians still argue whether professional thatchers traveled in winter to help with roof repairs or whether peasants handled it all themselves with extra straw and questionable optimism. Whatever the truth, you know one thing: you're on your own this morning. You wrap your cloak tight and prepare to go outside. The cold hits like a slap made of needles. You gasp. Even the chickens aren't awake yet, and they think dust bathing in snow is normal. You cross the yard, boots crunching, heading to the lean-to where you keep bundles of dry straw. Except the door's stuck. You yank. It creaks. You pull harder. A snap, your fingers sting, and finally it gives, revealing empty space. Someone took your last good bundle. Probably borrowed. Maybe stolen. Or maybe you used it and forgot. Could be any of those. A common winter truth: memory gets fuzzy when you're tired and cold. And right now, you're both. You eye the compost heap. Technically, it's off-limits for roofing repairs. But desperate times call for desperate rethatching. You grab a pitchfork and salvage the driest bits of plant stalk and straw from the top of the pile, holding your breath. You're now patching your house with what could be described as semi-fertilized insulation. But hey, it's dry. Climbing onto the roof is the worst part. Your ladder's missing 2 rungs. The thatch is slick with frost. You clamber up anyway, knees trembling, hands raw. From up here, you see your village in full winter stillness, thin trails of smoke, blanketed fields, and silhouettes of neighbors struggling with their own roofs. It's oddly peaceful, in that, hope you don't fall and break your neck, kind of way. You wedge the new straw into place, pressing it deep, layering it like a thatch lasagna. It's not perfect, but it slows the drip. You mutter a small victory chant under your breath. Then a louder curse when your foot slips. Back on the ground, heart pounding, you return to the house, half triumphant, half frostbitten. You open the door to warm air and the rich, earthy scent of pottage bubbling again. Someone stirred the pot. You're thankful. Nothing like soup fatigue to make you question your will to live. You slump near the fire, checking your hands. They're red, stiff, a little nicked. You press them close to the flames and wince. The blood returning feels like 1,000 pinpricks, but at least it's returning. You notice someone setting out last summer's preserved apples, wrinkled, leathery, but sweet. You chew one slowly, each bite a reminder that the sun once existed. Fun fact: some peasants wrapped apples in straw and buried them in cool, dark places to keep them edible through winter. Like a prehistoric refrigerator, minus the light, noise, or hope. The afternoon light begins to wane, turning gray and thick like porridge. You decide to check on your food stores. The cellar is your pantry, your vault, your last line of defense against winter's belly. You lift the trapdoor in the corner of the house and descend into the cold, damp darkness. The air smells like potatoes, dirt, and faint disappointment. There they are, your treasures. Root vegetables, salted pork, some pickled cabbage in earthen jars. A hunk of cheese, hard as stone but still technically edible. You do a quick inventory. Enough for a few more weeks if rationed right. You remind yourself to avoid the last turnips until things get truly dire. There's also the grain sack. You open it. Less than you remember. Way less. You mutter something not suitable for church and tighten the drawstring. Maybe mice. Maybe a mistake. Either way, the cellar echoes with hunger. You head back upstairs, mind already racing. You may have to barter soon. Or forage. Or do that thing you hate, talk to the reeve. The village reeve, a local official, not exactly a friend, is responsible for monitoring food supplies and enforcing quotas. He's as warm as a wet sock, and just as flexible. But he might spare some rye flour, if he's feeling generous. Or if you offer eggs. Or roof repairs. You make a mental note. Roofs are currency now. The sky outside has shifted. Snow flurries dance across the yard, soft and slow, like dust from some great white tablecloth being shaken overhead. You exhale, watching your breath mingle with the flakes. You're tired, sore, but proud. You've plugged a leak, salvaged your supplies, and avoided death by ladder. Not a bad day, by medieval standards. As dusk settles, everyone gathers near the fire again. The fire you saved. You sip hot broth from a wooden bowl, your hands wrapped around it like it's the Holy Grail. The wind moans outside, the thatch holds, for now, and the dripping has stopped. Tomorrow, there will be more chores. More cracks to fill. More surprises from the ceiling. But tonight, the roof is dry, the fire is warm, and the apples haven't fermented into disappointment. You close your eyes. Just for a moment. You wake up to footsteps crunching outside, deliberate, uneven. It's still early, maybe just after dawn, though the weak, pale light leaking through the slats in the shutter hardly counts as proof. You sit up, ears tuned. It's not an animal. Too slow. Probably someone from the village. And then comes the knock. 3 soft raps on the wooden door. Not urgent. Not angry. But not friendly either. You glance toward the hearth, embers only, nothing to brag about, and then toward the food stores. You sigh. It's too early for drama, but winter doesn't care about timing. You pull on your boots, cold and stiff, and creak the door open. It's the Reeve. Perfect. He's wrapped in layers, fur hat, stained cloak, gloves that look like they've been chewed by every dog in the parish. His face is pink with cold, and his breath curls in little puffs as he speaks. Saw the roof work yesterday, he grunts. Still got that ladder? You nod, a little wary. Council says to inspect the village granary. Need height. You'll help. Ah. Not a request. Helping the Reeve is like helping a bear find more bees. You're not sure it ends well for anyone, but saying no isn't really an option. Besides, you're curious. The granary is normally off-limits unless you're delivering grain or caught stealing it. Today, you'll be seeing the guts of it. You grab your ladder, sling a crust of bread in your cloak, and follow him through the frosted village lanes. Snow crunches beneath your boots, each step louder than your thoughts. The granary stands like a smug giant at the edge of the common square, thick stone base, raised off the ground on staddle stones to keep out rodents and moisture, with a heavy timbered door locked tighter than a monk's confession. He opens it with a large iron key, and you get your first proper look inside. Sacks. Rows and rows of sacks, stacked like the dreams of a summer long gone. Rye, barley, oats, maybe. It's hard to tell by sight, but you know the smell, grain and dust and the faint musk of preservation. You're here to help check for dampness, rot, and intrusion. Rats are always trying. Sometimes they succeed. As the Reeve climbs the ladder first, you hand up tools, a dull iron hook, a lantern, a length of rope. Then you ascend behind him, the ladder groaning under the both of you. The loft is chilly but dry, and shafts of pale light cut through chinks in the planks. You start lifting sacks, checking the bottom layers. Most are solid. A few have soft corners, bad sign. Moisture. You open one and sniff. Mold. Not awful, but creeping in. Mark it, the Reeve says. You do. He pulls open a trapdoor leading to a lower crawlspace beneath the granary. You peer down into the darkness. It smells worse. You lower the lantern and spot rat droppings, fresh. Cheeky little devils, he mutters. You both spend the next hour patching, sweeping, tossing one ruined sack onto a cart. It's not glamorous work. Not even work most people know gets done. But without it, the entire village could starve. You're reminded, again, that survival doesn't come from heroics. It comes from maintenance. Historians still argue whether community granaries were fairly distributed or controlled by favoritism and bribery. Some evidence suggests village councils worked democratically. Other records tell of hoarding, punishment, and favors traded in the cold dark. You suspect the truth, as always, lives somewhere in the smoke. By mid-morning, you're done. Your fingers are sore, your back aches, and you've got grain dust in places no one talks about. The Reeve nods, says nothing more, and walks away. Typical. You take a shortcut home through the woods behind the village. A dangerous choice in deeper winter, but this close to town, it's more scenic than sinister. And what a scene, the world is muffled in white. Every branch frosted, every bush draped in icy finery. A deer track weaves through the underbrush. A raven calls overhead, sounding as annoyed with winter as you feel. You pause at the stream. Frozen over, but not solid. The edges crack when you prod them with a stick. This will be useful knowledge later. A false step could mean a boot full of misery, or worse. Some families draw water from wells, others melt snow. You do both. Melting snow isn't as straightforward as it sounds, though. You need clean, fresh layers. Dirty snow boils into dirtier soup. And it takes a lot of snow for just a little water. You've learned to plan ahead. You fill your skin at the stream's edge, just where the ice gives way to a sliver of flowing water, and then turn back toward the house, your breath coming harder now. Hunger's returned, as it always does. Inside, your family's gathered near the fire again. Someone's preparing a nettle tea, a bitter green brew that somehow manages to taste worse than it smells. Still, it warms the belly. You take a sip and resist the urge to gag. Barely. On the hearth, a pan of barley cake sizzles. Flat, chewy, plain, but delicious when your last real meal was broth with mystery root. You get one, and for a moment, you don't hate your life. As the day fades, you do some patchwork, stitching a tear in your cloak, rewrapping the handle of a broken tool with twine. Idle hands are cold hands. That's the rule. Fun fact, some peasants kept work rocks by the hearth, smooth stones they held or shifted in hand when sitting still, just to keep the blood flowing. Not as glamorous as a fidget spinner, but it did the trick. Evening closes in, early as always. You light a tallow candle, pungent, smoky, and settle in. A child's combing wool by firelight. Someone else is scratching letters on a scrap of birch bark, practicing the alphabet they learned from the priest. It's quiet. You think back to the granary. How easily things could have gone wrong. One infestation, one leaky roof, and the whole supply would have been spoiled. Then what? Snow stew? Nope. You sigh, grateful the inspection went well, grateful your roof's holding, and most of all, grateful for the barley cake still lingering on your tongue. The wind howls again, just outside, like a dog that's lost its way. But in here, you're warm. You're fed. And for tonight, that's enough. You're up before the rooster again. Not because you want to be, but because the cold is smarter than you. It creeps through every seam in the wall, every knot in the wood, and finds your spine like a mapmaker searching for landmarks. And once it's there, sleep is over. You stretch under the blanket, which at this point might as well be a stiff burlap flag. You listen. The house is quiet, the kind of quiet that says everyone else is either asleep or pretending to be. You tiptoe across the creaking floorboards toward the hearth and check the embers. Barely glowing. You blow gently, feed in some dry kindling, and wait. It's your turn to fetch wood. Again. Now, wood is the lifeblood of winter survival, but it's also the stuff of endless stress. You can't just chop down the whole forest. Woodland is often common land, regulated by your manor or lord, and you're only allowed to take fallen branches, or risk fines, or worse. And wood doesn't dry itself. It needs to be seasoned, stacked, sheltered. Otherwise, it burns like wet sponge. You slip outside, clutching an empty basket and the tiny hope that someone else refilled the pile recently. They didn't. What's left is a sad assembly of damp twigs, some chopped yew logs that need months of drying, and 2 insultingly short sticks that might warm a mouse. You sigh and head for the copse behind the house. The sun's barely rising, a dull smear of gray across the horizon. You spot a few fallen limbs and drag them back, heavy with frost. Backbreaking work, but essential. As the saying goes, wood warms you twice, once when you chop it, and again when you burn it. You're just missing the first half of the deal this time. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants faced legal prosecution more for wood gathering or for poaching, but both were risky games. Wood gathering was constant. You could live without meat. You could not live without fire. Once back inside, you split the frozen limbs with a dull hatchet, one eye on your fingers. It's hard to explain how quickly a single slip can ruin your season. A wounded hand in winter is a slow disaster. Infection, stiffness, lost productivity, it's not just an injury, it's a sentence. Still, you manage it. You get a small pile going, and soon the fire is cheerful again, crackling and snapping like it's proud of you. Breakfast, if you can call it that, is leftover pottage warmed by the hearth. It tastes of cabbage, a hint of turnip, and something else you can't quite identify, probably yesterday. You eat quickly, trying not to think too much about flavor. Then it's time for the day's main task, water. The snow's fallen again overnight, and the village well is a good walk away. You grab 2 buckets and a wooden yoke and start the trek. The air is knife-sharp, your breath like steam from a kettle. Even the birds look cold. At the well, you join a small line of bundled figures. You nod. They nod. No one speaks much. It's too early and too cold. A rope creaks. A bucket sloshes. Ice crunches underfoot. You draw your water, the rope stiff with frost, and haul the load home. Carrying water is its own art. Don't swing, don't spill, don't trip. Every drop saved is effort preserved. On the way back, you pass old Greta's hut. She's the village widow, rumored to be part witch, part healer, and all trouble. Her roof's sagging. Her chimney's still. You pause. Against your better judgment, or maybe because of it, you step up and knock. A groan from inside. Then footsteps. Then the door opens just enough for one sharp eye and half a frown. "I'm not dead," she croaks. "Didn't think you were," you reply. Then why the knocking? You hold up the water bucket. She stares at it. Then at you. Then she opens the door. Inside, it's colder than out. No fire. She's bundled in rags, shaking. You sigh, step in, and go about fixing the hearth. Turns out, her kindling's wet. You give her some of yours. She doesn't say thank you, but she doesn't curse you either, so, progress. You light the fire, feed in bits of dry wood, and soon the room is warming. In the corner, you spot something odd, a small jar of greenish goop. Oh, that? She mutters. Boar fat mixed with crushed garlic and nettles. Good for frostbite. Or nightmares. Or both. You raise an eyebrow. Quirky remedies are Greta's specialty. She once claimed that boiled mouse broth helped toothaches. You never asked her to prove it. As you leave, she calls after you, take care of your hands. You'll miss them when they're black. Comforting. Back home, the day winds into more routine. Mending tools. Breaking ice from the chicken trough. Checking the smokehouse. Winter is a cycle of repair, more than anything. Fix it, feed it, keep it from breaking. You spend part of the afternoon helping a neighbor fix their animal pen. One of the support posts snapped under snow weight. You wedge it upright with spare logs, tie it in place with rope, and hope the cow inside doesn't lean too hard on it. She eyes you the whole time like she's plotting your downfall. As you work, you hear a distant crunch, someone trudging across the snow in a hurry. A young boy from down the road, panting, face red. They're boiling salt, he yells. Now that's news. Salt, precious, heavy, and always running out, is usually bought or bartered. But if your village sits near a salt spring or marsh, you might gather brine and boil it down in iron pans. It's labor-intensive, smoky, and smells like socks and seawater had a child. But it's worth it. You rush toward the far end of the village, following the smoke. Sure enough, a fire's roaring under a massive iron basin, filled with slowly simmering brine. You can smell it before you see it. Families crowd around, waiting their turn, hoping for even a pinch. Salt means preserved meat. It means flavor. It means status. You offer to help stir, your hands sticky with steam and salt flecks. Not too fast, someone warns. You'll splash and waste it. Or melt your eyebrows off, someone else adds cheerfully. You stir like your life depends on it. Later, after the fires died down and the salt scraped from the pan into clay crocks, you walk home with just a handful wrapped in cloth. But it feels like treasure. You'll use it sparingly, on meat, on bread, maybe even in that terrible tea. As night falls, your muscles ache, your breath fogs up the window slits, and your fingers are starting to stiffen again. But the fire's strong, the water jugs are full, and there's a glint of salt tucked in your pocket. You lie down, body humming with fatigue, and for the first time in days, you don't feel quite so brittle. Outside, the snow continues to fall. Silent. Relentless. Inside, you sleep. And you dream of salt. You wake to coughing. Not yours. Someone else's, wet, rattling, low in the chest. You crack open an eye and try to locate it. It's coming from the corner of the room, where your cousin's been sleeping under a pile of blankets that look more like laundry than bedding. His breath wheezes with every exhale, a sickly metronome against the crackle of the hearth. You sigh. It's happening again. Winter is never gentle, but sometimes it goes for the throat, literally. Respiratory illness is rampant in the cold months. It creeps in like the frost, slow and invisible, and it doesn't take much, a night with wet socks, a drafty door, or a shared spoon. One day you're singing, the next, you're gasping. The fire's low. You shuffle over, throw on some fresh wood, and let the warmth wash back through the room like rising bread. Then you cross to your cousin and touch his forehead. Hot. Damp. Trouble. There's no real doctor in the village. There's the priest, who reads Latin prayers over the sick. There's Greta, who may or may not heal you with moss, onion poultices, or slightly expired superstition. But mostly, there's you, and your knowledge passed down in whispers and repetition. You heat some water, toss in elderberry, thyme, a sliver of garlic. Not because you expect miracles, but because it's better than watching him suffer with nothing. You prop him up with an extra cloak, whisper something reassuring, and spoon the hot, bitter broth between his lips. He flinches at the taste. Always a good sign. As the day lightens, you start mentally cataloging the village's health. Old Marta lost 2 boys last winter to a fever that turned them gray in 2 days. Alan the smith's wife miscarried just after New Year's. Everyone seems healthy, until they're not. Historians still argue whether rural medieval folk were actually more resistant to illness due to constant exposure or more vulnerable because of chronic malnourishment and poor hygiene. Likely, it was a brutal balance of both. You live on the edge, always. You need more garlic, more dried herbs. So, you pull on your cloak, fasten your boots, and head for the communal store hut, a narrow lean-to half hidden beside the chapel, where dried roots, winter apples, and preserved bundles of greens hang like grim trophies. When you arrive, a few others are already picking through it. You nod at them, make your way to the back, and sort through the remaining bundles. Not much left. A few wrinkled apples, 1 jar of thickened honey, and what looks like a shriveled lump of something medicinal, or maybe just really tired ginger. You take what you can, leave 2 lengths of twine as barter, and head back. Along the way, you pass a group of children rolling snowballs and attempting to build what looks like either a snowman or a snow goat, it's unclear. Their cheeks are red, their breath quick. One boy has no mittens, and he's using his sleeves instead. You think about your cousin and how easily that kind of thing goes sideways. Fun tidbit. Some medieval parents used wool soaked in vinegar as a kind of a medicinal mitten. It was said to prevent frostbite and ward off cough demons. Whether it worked or just smelled bad enough to scare illness away remains unclear. At home, your cousin is resting, breathing easier. You spoon more broth into him, light incense you found in a forgotten jar, probably a leftover from All Saints' Day, and stuff a cloth into the window gap to block the draft. You're playing healer, and you're not half bad. The rest of the day rolls forward. You help skin a rabbit your brother snared, small, bony, barely worth the effort, but still protein. You save the bones for broth. Every scrap counts. Then you help spin some wool into rough thread. Your fingers ache, but it's meditative in a way. The pull, the twist, the soft tension between hand and spindle. You joke with your sister about starting a weaving empire. She laughs so hard she drops the spindle into the fire pit and has to fish it out with tongs. You're reminded, again, that laughter has medicinal value too. By mid-afternoon, you decide to venture into the woods for fresh pine. Not for firewood, but to hang in the room. Its scent masks the musk of sickness and damp, and it's said to clear the lungs. Whether that's true or just a convenient belief doesn't matter. You walk through the snow-draped trees, breath puffing, snow squeaking under your boots. It's quiet, like the whole forest is holding its breath. You find a few good boughs, snip them, and bundle them with twine. On your way back, you spot deer tracks, fresh. Your mind instantly calculates, meat, hide, sinew. But hunting's dangerous and heavily regulated. You file it away as a maybe for a leaner week. Back home, you hang the pine, stir the broth, check your cousin. His eyes flutter open. He mumbles something about cheese. You take that as a request, find a hard rind in the pantry, and let him nibble. The colors returning to his face. Small wins. That night, the family eats together, barley stew with shredded rabbit, a few precious slices of bread, and one apple sliced 8 ways. Conversation is quiet but companionable. The children tell stories they clearly made up. Your uncle insists he saw a wolf in the village last night. No one believes him, but it's good theater. You sit by the fire with your bowl, letting the warmth soak into your bones. You're so tired you can barely taste the food, but you savor every mouthful. You've earned it. Later, you climb into bed next to your cousin, who's breathing easier now. He mumbles a thank you before drifting off. You stare at the ceiling, watching the shadows flicker with firelight. You think about how much survival depends not on strength, but on watchfulness. On catching the cough before it festers. On fetching pine because it might help. On being the one who notices and acts. The wind moans outside again, but the sound no longer startles you. It's just winter talking to itself. You've learned its language by now. And tonight, at least, your house holds the heat. You're jolted awake by a shout. It's muffled, distant, coming from down the lane, but loud enough to pull you from the comfortable cave of warmth you built under your layers of wool and fur. You rub the sleep from your eyes, blink into the darkness, and listen. There it is again, someone calling for help. You fumble for your boots, already crusted with half-frozen mud, and throw your cloak over your shoulders. Outside, the air slaps you awake fully, sharp, dry, and utterly freezing. Snow creaks underfoot as you hurry toward the sound, passing shuttered windows glowing faintly with candlelight. You find the commotion near the carpenter's cottage. A small crowd's gathered, most still in nightclothes and boots half-laced. In the middle of it all, a collapsed roof. The carpenter's old storage shed, used mostly for drying boards and storing tools, has caved in under the weight of wet snow. No one was inside, thank the saints, but the damage is serious. Timber splintered, tools buried, the roof a blanket of sagging, broken shingles. Everyone stands silently, stunned. Then the murmurs start. What caused it? Who's going to help fix it? Can anything be saved? You step forward with a few others to start digging. The snow is heavier than it looks, soaked through from yesterday's melt and freeze. Your hands are numb almost instantly, but you press on, tossing shovelfuls aside, revealing broken saws, frost-bitten chisels, and warped beams beneath. This isn't just a shed. It's the nerve center of the village's repairs. With spring still a fantasy, losing these tools could mean a dozen roofs left leaking and wagons unrepaired. And so begins another long, cold day, unplanned and unpaid. Historians still argue whether medieval villages operated more like cooperatives or tightly controlled feudal hubs, but days like this suggest the truth lived somewhere in between. When a roof falls, no lord comes running. Only neighbors do. You work shoulder to shoulder with a blacksmith, a herder, two young boys too small to lift much but eager anyway, and the carpenter himself, swearing, weeping, then swearing again. As the sun rises behind sheets of dull white clouds, someone brings hot cider. It's weak and barely warm, but it runs down your throat like molten joy. Someone else starts singing a winter hymn, off-key but comforting. Spirits lift, slightly. Once the worst of the mess is cleared, plans are made: who has timber, who can spare nails, who can swing a hammer. You volunteer for tomorrow's rebuild team. Of course you do. Everyone does. Survival isn't solo. As you walk back home, your body aches with that deep kind of exhaustion that lives somewhere below your muscles. Your fingers are raw, your nose runs uncontrollably, and your stomach is starting to bark like a neglected dog. You reach your door, step inside, and, the heat from the hearth hits you like a hug. Someone added spruce needles to the fire. It smells sharp, earthy, alive. Your cousin is up right now, spooning pottage and giving you a look that says, "Did you fight a bear?" You collapse beside him and grab your own bowl. He's definitely better. Which means he'll be back to stealing your cheese rations soon enough. After eating, you spend the afternoon tending to things that cannot wait, scraping the ice from the animal troughs, checking for leaks in the barn roof, and patching the back window with strips of soaked leather to keep the wind out. Winter maintenance is like fighting off an invisible army, always reacting, never quite ahead. Later, you visit the forge. Not to shoe a horse or fix a blade, but to warm your soul. There's something about a fire hot enough to melt iron that makes your little hearth seem like a candle stub. The blacksmith greets you with a grunt and a nod toward a stool. You sit. He hammers. Sparks fly. You talk a little. Not much. Mostly about snow and bread and how the goat keeps escaping its pen. Then he shows you something, a trick he's been using. He fills a clay pot with small stones, heats it in the forge, then wraps it in rags and places it under his bedding at night. It radiates heat for hours. Like a primitive hot water bottle. You raise an eyebrow. It doesn't catch fire? Only once, he replies. Fringe innovation? Absolutely. But brilliant. You make a mental note to try it. As dusk falls, you're drawn to the chapel. Not out of piety, necessarily, but for the warmth. The priest keeps a fire going, and it's one of the only places in the village where people gather in relative stillness. You step inside, nod to the others, some praying, some resting, some just warming their boots, and sit near the brazier. The priest mumbles his way through a psalm. It blends with the crackle of the coals and the low, rhythmic creak of the wooden benches. There's a sense of peace here, if not belief. A reminder that survival isn't always about chopping wood or boiling roots, it's also about pausing. Taking stock. Breathing. And you need that. Because tomorrow, you rebuild a shed. Back home, your sister is sewing. She holds up a small cloth pouch, lavender and dried chamomile stitched inside. For your boots, she says. Keeps the smell down. You pretend to be offended. But honestly, it might also keep rats away. Night falls hard again, as it always does this time of year. Stars blur in a frost-laced sky. Wind plays across the rooftops like an invisible fiddler testing each house's resolve. But you, tucked under your blankets with a warm stone wrapped in cloth and your cousin no longer coughing like death himself has moved in, feel something strange. Not happiness. Not exactly. But resilience. You survived another day. You helped someone else do the same. And your boots now smell vaguely of flowers. Progress. You open your eyes to the glow of soft orange light. For a moment, you wonder if the house is on fire, but no, it's just the reflection of sunrise off fresh snow. The world outside your window is glowing. Crisp. Clean. Too clean. The kind of clean that only happens when snow falls all night and no one walks through it. The house is quiet. Your cousin is still sleeping, no cough. A small miracle. You stretch, creak your way out of the bed pile, and immediately regret it. The cold nips every inch of exposed skin like it's punishing you for daring to exist. You throw on your cloak, double socks, grab your boots, still warm from the hot stone trick, which, by the way, did not set anything on fire, thank you very much, and shuffle out the door into the blue-white morning. The carpenter's ruined shed is waiting. You're not the only one heading that way. Others join you along the path, some carrying tools, some dragging wood on sleds. One woman has a chicken tucked under her arm. No one asks why. It's just one of those days. By the time you reach the site, a small crowd has gathered. Plans are made fast. Everyone already knows what needs to be done. You're assigned to the lifting crew. Lucky you. The process is slow, backbreaking, freezing. Snow gets everywhere, under your collar, in your boots, even up your sleeves somehow. You pry up broken beams, hammer new ones in place, lash support posts with strips of old leather because the nails are running low. It's not pretty. But it's standing. Fun fact. Medieval peasants often used animal hair mixed with mud to chink the gaps between beams. It kept wind out and insulation in. Today, someone shows up with a bucket of that exact concoction. Thanks, goat shed leftovers. You smear it into the cracks. It smells rustic. Halfway through the day, a boy slips and drops a beam on his foot. He yelps, limps away dramatically, and sits on a pile of firewood announcing that his life is over. You give him some bread and tell him he's probably fine. If not, you'll amputate. He laughs. Then immediately looks worried. You continue working. One curious detail: no one complains. Not really. There are groans, muttered curses, some overly creative insults hurled at warped wood, but not one person says, "Why am I doing this?" Because the answer is obvious. You do it because next time, it might be your roof, your tools, your livelihood buried under ice. Historians still debate whether peasant communities functioned on obligation or loyalty. But when your back is aching and you're tying a support beam with twine made from horsehair, it sure feels like both. By late afternoon, the frame is complete. Someone sets a pot over a fire pit and stews up something vaguely edible. You don't ask what's in it. You just eat, because hunger turns every stew into gourmet cuisine. The warmth spreads through your chest like a friendly ghost with good taste in seasoning. Back home that evening, you discover something beautiful: your sister baked bread. Real bread. It's still warm, still steaming when she slices it. Not fancy, coarse flour, a little honey, maybe a few seeds. But the smell alone could raise the dead. You devour your portion, then lick your fingers in the most undignified way possible. After dinner, the family gathers for story time. It's a tradition, especially in deep winter when the nights are so long they might never end. Your grandfather takes the lead, describing the time a fox got into the pantry and ate 2 weeks' worth of cheese. He exaggerates wildly, claiming the fox knew how to open doors and write poetry. You laugh. Everyone laughs. Laughter like this is a survival tactic. You tuck it away like a ration of joy. Later, by the fire, your cousin brings out something unexpected: a carved flute. Crude, wooden, slightly out of tune, but when he plays it, the notes swirl through the air like warm breath in cold air. He's not good. He knows it. But that's not the point. Music, in winter, is medicine. You clap along. Someone starts singing. The blacksmith's daughter bangs 2 spoons together. Suddenly, it's a concert. And you're there for it, dirty boots and all. A fringe fact for the night: some medieval folk believed singing kept evil spirits out of the home. Not because the notes scared them, but because singing showed joy, and joy was armor. You like that. You decide to believe it, too. Eventually, the fire dims. The spoons go quiet. People yawn. You collect warm stones for the bed, arrange your layers, and slide under the covers. But sleep doesn't come right away. You lie there thinking about that new roof, the shared soup, the ridiculous fox story, and the way your cousin's flute, squeaky as it was, made your chest ache with something close to hope. You wonder how many nights like this your ancestors endured. How many boots they wore through. How many beams they lifted. How many times they cursed the snow while also loving it, because it forced everyone closer. You watch the fire's last glow fade into the shadows, and you think, tomorrow will be just as cold. Just as hard. But tonight, you are warm. And for now, that's enough. Morning comes with no warning. No rooster, no bells, just the subtle shift of gray creeping in through the shutters and the slow realization that your body aches in entirely new and creative ways. You groan as you sit up. Every joint sounds like it's auditioning for a percussion ensemble. You check your toes, still attached, still, mostly, warm. Victory. Outside, the snow has paused, but the cold is a living thing now, thick, sharp, unrelenting. You pull on yesterday's clothes, still damp in places, and chew a chunk of bread so hard it might file your teeth down a size. No one speaks much this morning. The kind of silence that comes when a village is collectively exhausted but knows there's more to do. You head to the fields, not to plant, of course. Not in this tundra. But to check the hay stores in the barn. The path crunches beneath your feet. The frozen mud makes everything feel harder, heavier. The barn is lined with frost along the inner beams, and the hay smells sweet and a little sour. You run your fingers through a stack, looking for mold. It's good. That's rare. Hay is life. Not just for animals, for you, too. You sleep on it, feed the goats with it, use it as insulation. And when desperate enough, it's been known to go into soup. Not great soup, mind you, but soup. One stack's been tampered with. Probably rats. You curse them softly, though you admit, if you were a rat, you'd choose the warmest place too. Historians still argue whether rodents helped or hindered medieval ecosystems. On one hand, they spread disease. On the other, they were part of the cleanup crew. One less cheese rind for you, but a cleaner alley. Fair trade? You set a few traps, reinforce the boards with moss-packed planks, and head back home. The village is quieter today. Fewer tools clanging, more people conserving energy. It's the kind of cold that makes even firewood reluctant to burn. You light the hearth anyway, coaxing it with dried pine cones and prayer. Eventually, it catches. You spend the next hour mending, socks with holes, gloves with seams coming undone, a tunic that's more patched than cloth now. Your fingers are stiff and your stitches crooked, but it's better than nothing. You hum as you work. A tune your mother used to sing while cooking nettle soup and pretending it was stew. The door creaks open. Your sister steps in with flushed cheeks and a bucket full of snow. She's been fetching ice for water. Boil it, strain it, drink it. It's cleaner than the stream this time of year, which is likely more slush than flow. She hands you a small piece of dried apple. It's barely a bite, but it tastes like sunshine in July. You suck on it like candy. A neighbor stops by. He's older, one of those elders who seems made entirely of sinew and stubbornness. He asks to borrow your hearth. His own chimney is clogged with creosote, and the smoke's filled his house. You welcome him in, share some embers, and listen to him mutter about young thatchers who couldn't stack a roof if their lives depended on it. Midday passes in a hush. The house feels smaller in winter, the walls pulled inward by frost. But there's a warmth to it, not just from fire, but from presence. People pass through. They stay for tea, to warm their hands, to borrow needles, to ask after your cousin's health. And sometimes, they come just to not be alone. That afternoon, the priest calls a short gathering. Not for prayer, well, not just. But to organize a patrol. Wolves have been heard howling at the tree line. You join the watch. You walk in formation through the snowy edge of the village, torches in hand, pitchforks, axes, whatever will look pointy in the dark. The woods are silent, deep, full of sleeping things. You wonder if the wolves are truly out there, or just a story someone's grandpa cooked up to keep kids from wandering. Still, you believe. Because it's cold enough for anything to be real. A quirky note, some peasants used to wear charms of dried wolfsbane, believing it kept real wolves at bay. You don't have wolfsbane. But your sister did stitch a little dog onto your sleeve for luck. Close enough. The patrol finds no tracks. Just trees, snow, and a rabbit that gives one look at you before sprinting into the brush like it owes you money. Back home, you collapse. Your feet ache. Your knees feel like someone filled them with gravel. But there's stew on the fire, a bit of turnip, a pinch of barley, some dried meat. You eat slowly, savoring the rare saltiness of preserved pork. And as you eat, your sister shows you something she's been working on, a wall hanging made of scrap wool. It's crooked and rough, but it shows a house, a tree, two little people holding hands. It's lovely. You pin it near the hearth. That night, you sit with your cousin. He tells you a story he heard once, of a far northern village where people built underground tunnels between homes so they wouldn't freeze walking house to house. You laugh. Then pause. That actually sounds kind of smart. Historians still debate how much innovation peasants were allowed to pursue, but necessity doesn't wait for permission. People did what they had to, especially when cold settled into the bones of the world. You tuck in again, fire still crackling. Outside, the wind picks up. Inside, you breathe deep. You survived another patrol. The wolves stayed in their dreams. And tomorrow, you'll do it all over again. One more night down. Your eyes open to a soft knock at the door. It's still dark, barely morning. You can see your breath again. The fire has died, leaving only a faint orange whisper buried in the ashes. You wrap yourself tight and shuffle across the wooden floor, opening the door a crack. A messenger from the reeve stands there, pale from the cold, cheeks red as beetroot. "Snowstorm coming," he mutters, handing over a scrap of parchment with a list of names. Yours is on it. Mandatory gathering. Preparations. You sigh, close the door, and stare into the sleepy shadows of your home. Winter doesn't care if you're tired. So you get dressed. Again. Layered tunic, cloak, hood, mitts. Your sister stirs and mumbles something about saving some embers this time. You nod. Lesson learned. Outside, the village is awake before the sun. Figures trudge through half-lit streets, boots sinking into snow. You all meet near the storage barn. The reeve stands atop a crate, looking like a prophet of doom in woolen layers. We've got a day, maybe less, he says. Everyone gets a task. You're assigned windbreak duty. That means dragging spare planks and bundled reeds out to reinforce doors, windows, and any suspicious cracks in walls. You join a crew of 6 and get to work, hammering boards across thresholds, pressing clay into chinks, and even nailing up old fabric over the shutter gaps. One clever soul, he's got a spark in him, builds a makeshift snow wall outside his door, like a reverse igloo. You immediately copy him. Snow insulates better than it looks. The baker's boy brings hard rolls around, still warm from a hurried bake. You eat one in 4 bites. Crumbs go everywhere. Dignity, nowhere. By noon, wind slices in from the north like it's got a vendetta. It howls between cottages, flings powder into faces, and turns every exposed bit of skin to stone. The storm is early. You sprint home, carrying your sister's extra boots in case she didn't make it back. She did. She's tending the fire, boiling water, humming that same soft tune. Then the storm hits. Not gently. Not poetically. It slams the village like a drunken god hurling ice from the sky. You hear shutters rattle, beams groan, snow thud against the roof like fists. The whole house feels smaller suddenly, as if bracing against the weather's fury. You sit close to the hearth. Too close. Your leg hairs might singe. But you don't move. For hours, the storm rages. Your family huddles together, wrapped in cloaks, wool, and each other. Stories are shared not to entertain, but to distract. Someone recalls the winter when geese froze mid-flight. Someone else swears he saw a deer get buried standing up. You joke that if the wind gets stronger, the roof might blow off and take you with it. Your cousin says, "Good. Maybe the wind's warmer in France." Even during crisis, sarcasm survives. A curious historical fact for this moment: some medieval folks believed howling winds were the voices of spirits or the wild hunt, a spectral procession across the skies. Listening too closely might invite bad luck. So you don't listen. Not directly. You drown it out with more stories, more laughter, the clinking of spoon against bowl. Still, it's terrifying. The roof holds. Just barely. You press your back against a wobbling beam for over an hour, adding your body weight as reinforcement. At some point, your leg falls asleep. You don't dare shift. When evening finally arrives, the storm retreats like a bitter guest finally done arguing. Silence returns, but not the peaceful kind. The eerie, post-blizzard stillness that makes you wonder what the world looks like now. You wait a while before opening the door. It groans on the hinges, crusted with ice. And outside? Nothing but white. The world has vanished beneath it. Fences, paths, even rooftops, just pale humps and glittering dunes. The wind shaped it like an artist in a mood. You step out. Your boots sink instantly, snow up to your thighs. Your breath fogs the air in spirals. It's quiet. Sacred, almost. Like the land is exhaling. Your neighbor calls out from a buried window. He's alive. His family's alive. You wave, heart lighter. Then comes the digging. Every villager appears, shovels in hand. You carve paths between homes, uncover doorways, check for roof collapses. By nightfall, your shoulders are jelly and your nose is redder than a minstrel's tights. But no one died. No animals lost. No houses beyond repair. It's a miracle. Or maybe it's just preparation finally paying off. Back inside, dinner is simple: parsnips, dried onions, and a chunk of salted fish that tastes like old boots but fills the belly. You eat every bite. Afterward, your sister pulls out a candle stub and reads a story aloud, something about knights, or dragons, or both. You don't remember the plot. Just her voice, soft and steady, as snow falls again outside, quieter this time. You sit near the hearth. The dog curls at your feet. The last of the storm's roar has faded into memory. And you realize, you've survived the worst night of the season. Tomorrow, the thaw may begin. Or maybe not. But you'll be ready. So now, listener, your eyes begin to flutter. The blizzard has passed, the hearth is warm, and the night wraps you like a woolen blanket stitched with peace. Your breath slows. The world around you softens, snow muffling sound, shadows stretching long, the hush of a village finally at rest. Imagine yourself back in that tiny cottage, firelight dancing against old wood beams. The storm behind you, your family beside you, the cold held outside by everything you built, every beam you patched, every ember you saved. The wind is just a whisper now, like a lullaby hummed by the dark. The bed is piled high with warmth, straw, wool, layers of memories. You lie there listening to nothing in particular, your mind drifting like snowflakes falling on an undisturbed roof. No worries. No wolves. Just the crackle of fire and the soft rustle of sleep descending like a gentle spell. And you know now, those medieval peasants, they weren't just surviving. They were living. Singing, laughing, pulling each other through with mud-stained mittens and crooked spoons. And you, somehow, were right there with them. Now breathe. Deeper. Slower. Let the frost melt into dreams. You made it through the coldest night.